So what exactly is an authority bias?
Well, I think that term is not usually a technical term. It would refer to a class of behavior, a class of behaviors, and you can think of it as cases in which people would uh, accept that a conclusion is true based on the person or source of that conclusion or statement, without the underlying having some underlying structure in it. So if I tell you that the cerebellum is a part of the brain with the most neurons in it per unit volume, okay, you may not have any. Do you have any clue if that's true or not? Okay, so I could say, well, I'm a neuroscientist and I know that, and so you should just trust that. Now, that would be an appeal to authority, and if you trust me and that I trust an honest person, it would be true, and it is true, in fact. But a more effective strategy would be for me to say, well, here's how we know this. Here are the sorts of techniques that neuroscientists use to measure this. Here's how they do the cell counting. Here's the functional consequence. Why is the cerebellum so dense? Well, it's because it has to coordinate a lot of information that comes in parallel. They have a lot of these little tiny neurons in there, more than any other part of the brain. And so I explain this rather than stopping with authority. And so I think, again, authority bias may not be just one thing, but you can think of it as a class of behaviors which try to get people to accept something without having them understand the reasoning behind what they're accepting.
You've been very generous with your time, and you've been on the forefront of this field for a long time. And, again, an exceptional communicator.
Thank you.
What is a question that I haven't asked?
Well, I think often people try to ask about where neuroeconomics sort of ends. So we've talked, and most examples have been economic examples. They come easy to mind, or shopping, or investing, things like that. And I think a very natural question, which I can answer, is to what extent this also applies to all these other things in daily life, like political decision making is one, or our dealings with our family or kids. What about our ability to control our emotions? All these sorts of things. Are they really those different things from neuroeconomics? And my sense is that the economics part of neuroeconomics is a placeholder for something like behavioral science. And so all the different ways in which people have historically studied behavior, which include not just economics, but really very, very heavily in psychology, but also in political science, marketing research, some aspects of sociology or linguistics or evolutionary anthropology, a lot of different fields that all have some connection to human behavior, that all those could be put in there where you have neuroeconomics. So I don't think there's anything special about neuroeconomics. It could be some of the same principles apply to political decisions or apply to interpersonal decisions or other things that are not traditional economic decisions.
So if you had $100 million,
yep,
and I'm going to assume that you have $100 million,
of course,
you were going to invest $100 million in some field of research. Where would you put that money?
That's a great question. I think the self-centered one, of course, ours, because we do the most important work, etc. But that's not accurate. I think a couple of things. I would look at actually pro-social behavior generally. This is a little bit of what we do, but it's not a big thing. I think one of the big mysteries of societies, or why they actually work as well as they do, and it's not as simple as markets or institutions always reward good behavior, because they plainly don't, and it's not as simple as people have generally a good nature, because a population of all good natured people gets taken over quickly by bad actors. And I think that the type of research is at the intersection of psychology, organism behavior, political science, and economics, and it has to do with the tension between sort of systems and individuals in systems. So what I think a real challenge for a really, really complex world is understanding how you can have institutions and systems that change behavior at this macro scale, but still are functioning with individual decision makers in them. And this connects to complexity ideas. This connects, again, organizational behavior, and it's really hard to know how to fund that. So it's not an easy answer, because it's not as simple as like we're going to keep looking at the brain and figure out that. It's really at this sort of systemic societal level, and really at the tension again between the institutions and individuals. And that is, I think, one of the first order problems in social science, and we don't even have a handle on how to even think about that.
Well, clearly, I don't have $100 million,
yeah.
But to me, this is extraordinarily important to understand the way we make decisions and how those decisions can be manipulated and how they can be wrong is critical.
Yeah.
As me as an individual. Let's say instead of $100 million, let's say I had $100. Where would you suggest I invest?
Oh, and you mean investing literally for financial gain, or how would you spend it to improve yourself?
Improve myself.
Well, that's a great question. Actually, there's a glib answer, which is probably the right one. You should spend that money on experiences that generate good memories for you. And I would think that's better than, actually, so why is that? There is a lot of research done by social psychologists for the last couple of decades now that suggests that when people spend money on things or spend money on physical items, they actually generate less satisfaction and fewer good memories than often experiences. 100's a little funny, but if you said 2,000, I'd say go take a nice vacation. And you say, well, what if I can spend that on other things, like whether it's self-help or training or whatever? No, I'd say go take a nice vacation. And that's, of course, assuming that you're not in penury or in debt or something like that. But the basic idea is that where people make mistakes, and it sounds crazy, but where people make mistakes is they don't spend the money on experiences that generate good memories, etc. I think the other thing you would do with a relatively small amount of money is do give to others. And this is a recognition that in our society we generally have high standards of living, and of course $100 to you and me would mean a lot less to us than it would mean to somebody in a country with less standard of living. And there's a lot of evidence that suggests that when people are taking actions that connect them to others, that help others, they're better off, that they feel better about themselves, and they in general are more effective in other parts of life.
Yep. So, if you will, our brain gives us a reward for doing good things.
Absolutely, but it's even more than just the reward. It helps create a feeling of connection with others, and that feeling of connection, more than just the reward itself, seems to be what's critical for motivating other pro-social behavior. And so, in general, doing things that build those sorts of connections with other people, and it doesn't have to be something as giving away your money, it can be just connecting with friends. But those are things that tend to make people have more happy, fulfilling lives.
Thank you so much for giving us and donating your time and expertise. I very much appreciate it.
Enjoyed it. Thanks.